those who are not able to be here. Okay, so we are recording. I'm glad to see you all. Wave hi that you can see me and hear me. Awesome, good, okay. That's always the hardest part here. So, okay, little bit of an introduction. So my name is Dr. Bailey Koch. I am a senior lecturer in the teacher ed and special ed department here at UNK. Clearly I'm not here at UNK right now. This is my home office. Doubles as a dining room right now because we're in construction. But one of the most important things to know about me is that I am a major advocate for mental health. Reason being, my husband is a 5-time suicide attempt survivor. So he was diagnosed in 2009, and we'll kind of talk a lot about all through our whole story. He was going to be here with me today. Unfortunately, he's not unfortunately that he's a business owner, but he is a business owner and had some things come up, and he's got to meet with some customers. So it's just me today, but I'm fabulous, so you'll be fine. But like I said, my name is Dr. Bailey Koch. I'm thrilled to help you when it comes to education. I'm also thrilled to be a resource for you when it comes to mental health. I'm my husband's primary support person. Our oldest son will be 14 in September, and last year he had a suicide attempt. So, you know, is there a genetic component to mental health? Absolutely. Our son is doing very, very well now. He fortunately has grown up in a home that's very open about mental health. So he knew to come to us, and he was hospitalized in Richard Young inpatient unit, where my husband has been 3 different times. And then my teenager was in the youth unit last year. So just kind of a little bit of information about our personal side. The reason that I am entirely remote is because we also have another son who is 11, and he has epilepsy. So because of that, his neurologist has recommended that we, if at all possible, limit exposure to this virus as much as possible. Main reason being Asher gets he can have seizure activity that will break through with any type of virus, whether it be flu, a cold, anything. We often see seizure activity. So without knowing enough about this pandemic that's going on, it's just been recommended that we protect him as much as we can. So I am homeschooling and working full time. So if y'all would pray for me, that would be fabulous. Okay. So I'm just kind of going to start telling you our story and hopefully just give you a little bit of information about what we have been through and then what you can do to help yourself and other people. So let me go ahead and do a share screen here. And okay. All right, can you see my PowerPoint? Say yes or no. I couldn't hear anybody.
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Okay, thank you. All right, so what Jeremy and I do, our organization is called Anchoring Hope for Mental Health. This is my family. I am right here. This is my husband, Jeremy. This is our oldest son, Hudson, and then this is our youngest son, Asher. So that is just who we are, and we have chosen to do this in order to help other people understand that they're not alone, because we felt like we were alone for a long time during our journey. We never want anybody else to feel like that. So always willing to share, not afraid to talk about it. Okay. All right. Move on here. Okay, so a little bit more information about who we are. My husband identifies himself as a Christian hubby and dad. He is the owner of Natural Escapes, which is a landscaping and greenhouse services business in Cozad, Nebraska, where we live. He is a 5-time suicide attempt survivor. And then last year in June of 2019, his father was killed by mental illness when he completed suicide. So not only are we survivors, we're also the people who are left behind. So again, we speak about that genetic component that can be very, very common in mental illness. So I am Bailey. I'm a Christian, a wifey, and a mama. I work at the University of Nebraska at Kearney in teacher education and teacher ed special ed. And I'm a support person and an advocate for individuals with disabilities. I believe in fighting for those who can't easily fight for themselves. I tend to be a bit of a firecracker, and I think it's a good thing. It gets me in trouble sometimes, though. That's just the truth. All right. Moving on. So this is my husband and I, and kind of how our story began. So this is myself and my husband at my junior prom in 2001. So I graduated from Eustis Farnham. Anybody know where Eustis Farnham is? Tell me yes or no. No. Did anybody hear of it?
One person.
One person. Okay, where are you from? How do you know about Eustis?
I'm from Lawrence, Nebraska, but Mary Giggenbaugh is my aunt.
Oh my gosh, how fun. Okay, so Anthony is your cousin, correct? Yeah. I live a half a mile from Anthony. I live at the same lake that he does. How funny is that? Such a small world. So yes, Anthony built a house about a half a mile from us a couple of years ago. And yeah, so he is my neighbor. When we live in the country, if somebody is within 2 miles to 5 miles, that's a neighbor, right? That's so funny. Well, I'll tell him that I talked to you.
Bailey,
Oh, go ahead.
Can I interrupt your slides? We still have the initial slide up showing on the screen.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for telling me. Okay, hold on. Let me see what is going on here. All right. How about now?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I am so sorry for that. I will just keep it like this. I'll just have to click through them. So I don't know what's going on. So here was our second slide when I was talking through it and didn't realize you weren't seeing that. So just a little bit of information about us. This is my husband's 1954 Chevy that he inherited from his father, sadly a lot sooner than we expected. This is my 1949 Chevy with a working dump box trailer. I'm kind of addicted to really old trucks, so that's mine. Nobody else can have it. This is our Fairytale Beginning. So this picture right here is my husband and I at my 2001 prom in Eustis Farnham, where one of you knows where that is. Eustis Farnham is a consolidated school. Eustis has a little less than 400 people in the town. I graduated with 26, which was actually one of the largest classes that Eustis had ever seen. My nephew and niece currently go to Eustis, and I believe that there are 9 in one of their classes and 12 in another. So very small town, Nebraska. But the reason that it's important to show this is my husband and I were high school sweethearts. We have been together for 20 years in November. And we really did have that fairytale beginning, that beginning where you believe that you know that you're supposed to be together for the rest of your lives. And there's really never going to be any question of that or any really big problems. We have never questioned whether or not we were supposed to be together, but I will say that we grew up together. Having started dating when we were very young and going through all of these challenges, Jeremy and I have absolutely just learned how to grow up being married and then having children when I was 22 and 25. So very, very fairy tale start. So there's our wedding. My husband was a cross-country runner in college. I was a cross-country supporter. I would literally drive next to him because I do not run. That is by choice. And so we did have just kind of that fairy tale beginning. Now this picture, I always love to point out this picture because I remember posting this on Facebook. I remember posting it and people saying, oh my gosh, what a beautiful family. And oh, what a cute picture, so on and so forth. What's interesting though is this picture was taken in 2009, not long after our youngest son was born. This is Asher right here. Now, the reality of this picture, even though it just looks like we're super smiley and everything is wonderful, the reality of this picture is that we packed up and drove to Estes Park, Colorado, because that's where we absolutely love to go as a family. packed everything up and drove away in order to try to get the suicidal thoughts to stop. We thought that we could outrun them. We thought that we could just get away and ignore them. That was a life that we lived for a very long time because we didn't want anybody to know what my husband was actually dealing with. Okay. All right, moving on here. So Jeremy was diagnosed with depression in 2009. When he was very first diagnosed, he essentially said to me, I don't want anybody to know, because who's going to hire the crazy landscaper? That's what he believed. And while we know now that that's not the truth, there was such a stigma attached to mental illness that that's what we truly believed, especially him. So 2009, he was diagnosed, and a couple of weeks later, he just still was not feeling very well, but he absolutely was not telling me the reality of his thoughts. He wasn't even telling me how bad his suicidal thoughts had gotten. Now, if you see all of these different advertisements for different antidepressant medications, it says, if you experience suicidal thoughts, stop this medication or contact your doctor immediately. It doesn't say stop this medication. I apologize. It says contact your doctor immediately. Have you ever seen those? Okay. So the reality is, for somebody who is struggling that bad with mental illness, it is not that easy. It's not that easy to just be like, oh my gosh, my brain is not functioning. I think that I should contact my doctor. Okay. It doesn't work quite as easily for that. So that is why it's so important for somebody to have a support network. And we'll get more into that later. But essentially what happened was he went to his doctor. He still was not honest, even with his doctor, about the fact that his suicidal thoughts had increased. So instead of stopping that medication and trying a different medication, that doctor doubled the medication that Jeremy was on. So you can imagine probably what happened. Jeremy spiraled even further out of control. One day, I really fought myself. Every day I fought myself on whether or not I should go to work or not. I was a public school teacher in Gothenburg at the time, teaching special education, Spanish, and business there. And I really fought myself every day. Should I go? Should I stay home? Essentially, I had to babysit my husband very often. He couldn't be left alone. One day I fought myself and I decided to go ahead and go to work. I got a text about 3 o'clock when school was about to be out that said, please come home as soon as you can. Okay, well, school was about to be out anyway, so I took off, headed back home, and I didn't pick up my kids because I had a little bit of a bad feeling about what was going on. They were still at daycare. So I walked into the living room and I saw my husband sitting there with a shotgun. He was curled up in a ball on the couch and he was rocking back and forth. His arms and his hands were bruised, and essentially he looked at me and just said, something's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. And I said, okay, I think that we need to go get you more help because this is beyond what I know what to do. And thank God my husband said, okay. So that was September 11th of 2009. I loaded up my husband in the car. I drove him to Richard Young in Kearney, which is an inpatient mental health hospital. They also have outpatient services where we continue to go to this day to see our psychiatrist. Loaded him up in the car. We went there, and when you very first get there, it can be a little intimidating. It can be overwhelming, especially if it's your first time there. So they took us into this little room where an intake nurse asked us questions. Essentially, that nurse determines whether or not you are a harm to yourself or others, then talks to the doctor, and they decide whether or not to admit you to actually stay in the hospital to keep you safe. Jeremy would not tell the truth if I was still in the room. So the nurse and Jeremy asked me to leave. He felt by not telling me the truth that he was protecting me. That was what his brain was telling him at that time. So I still didn't know how bad that attempt and that day had gotten. I didn't know until much later that he had very nearly pulled the trigger. Fortunately, we thank God every day he didn't, and they did decide to keep him. But I never will forget when I left that room. I had to, they gave me all of this information that I needed to do when I got home. I needed to remove all weapons from our house, knives, guns, shoelaces, belts, anything that he could use to end his life. I had to go home and do that. So when I was driving home by myself, ready to go pick up my kids, I called my friend Kara. Kara has been a friend of mine since high school, and I was just chatting with her, and she said, something's wrong. What is going on? I just lost it. She knew in my voice that something had changed. Completely lost it. I had to pull over at the Odessa exit on the interstate, and I just spilled everything to her. I spilled everything that we had been dealing with for how many months, and I got ready. I got ready for her to tell me that I needed to leave him because he was dangerous. I got ready for her to tell me that this is not okay, and we really need to protect me and everybody else and need to leave. That's what I believed was going to happen. Instead, Kara said, tell me what you need me to do. And I told her what they had told me I needed to do, which was to remove all of the guns and everything in the house. Kara and her husband came over to my house. They helped me remove all the guns. They helped me get the house ready. They helped me take care of my kids. Never at any time did anybody tell me I needed to leave my husband. They just listened. And that was the turning point for me. That was when I knew that it was going to be okay to start being open about our reality. Unfortunately, it took my husband longer because he was the one who was suffering. So we lived for 3 more years, pretty much in the dark. In fact, when I had left Jeremy or Richard Young, he told me, don't tell anybody that I'm here. I don't want anybody to know. They're going to think I'm crazy. That was what Jeremy believed. He didn't want to be involved in the groups. He wanted to stay in his room by himself. They really had to encourage him to start talking to other people. He believed everybody else there was crazy and he just shouldn't be there. When he finally was released and was able to come back home, we, for 3 years, pretty much lived in the dark with only a small number of people knowing. Our family knew, Kara and her husband knew, and that was pretty much it. We just tried to put on that smiley, happy face all the time. So it was 2012, 2 days after Valentine's Day, February 16th. I know that you're looking at this picture that's in front of you wondering what on earth happened. This Christmas card was taken in December of 2012. We put it out there. Smiley, happy faces, right? Now you guys know what we were actually living behind the scenes, but this is what we put on Facebook. February 16th of 2012, my husband drove on the highway without a seatbelt. He drove into a semi truck, clipped the edge of a semi that was carrying a wide load. It spun him around, and another ongoing semi truck hit my husband's truck. It was, it's hard to tell, but this was a 1500, which is a half-ton Dodge Ram. Jeremy was right over here in the driver's seat. And it looks like that truck went through a meat grinder. How my husband survived is a complete and total miracle. And so we have decided that every day we can give thanks or we can be sad. We've decided to give thanks and to help other people not have to go through what we went through. This was Jeremy when he got out of his second surgery. That was when I saw him. He was life flighted from Kozad. This accident took place about 1 mile east of Kozad. He was life flighted from Cozad to Kearney. When they found the internal injuries, he was then life flighted again from Kearney to Creighton University Medical Center, where we stayed for a month. My parents took care of our kids. Hudson was 5 and Asher was 2 at the time. And Jeremy had a punctured lung, a leg that was broken in 4 places. He now has titanium rods in his legs. He had a fractured pancreas. That was one of the worst ones. That was the worst one. A brain bleed, and he lost vision in one of his eyes, which has since come back. I think that's it. It's a lot. But essentially, if you don't know a whole lot about the pancreas, I have to add in this humor. And please remember that we totally and completely understand that mental illness is not funny. However, it is our life. And so we have had to learn how to be open and honest and how to find humor in our everyday lives. Because if we don't find that humor, it does eat us alive. We have tried it before. We have to find that humor. So my best friend, Megan, is a radiographer. She's in the medical field. And I remember calling her as soon as the doctor told me that it was a fractured pancreas and that they were waiting to figure out if the body could heal itself or if we needed to go onto the donor list. So I have signed all the paperwork to add my husband to a donor list. He was at the top because of the life-threatening nature of his accident. But I remember calling Megan and I said, Megan, what the fudge, I did not say fudge, is a pancreas? What does it do? This doctor is telling me that it's his pancreas, that we may need to have a transplant. Because all I knew of the pancreas was Grey's Anatomy. Does anybody else watch Grey's Anatomy?
Not seeing anybody.
Nobody. Oh my gosh, you guys, come on. You have got to get with this. Oh, seriously. So in Grey's Anatomy, Dr. Bailey gives all of these rules to the new residents. And one of the first rules she says is, don't mess with the pancreas. So that was what was in my head. I literally kept hearing, when this doctor's talking to me, I literally kept hearing the doctor say the pancreas, and I was hearing in my head Dr. Bailey in Grey's Anatomy say, don't mess with the pancreas. And I was terrified. So I called my best friend Megan and I was like, tell me what you know about the pancreas. Literally, she basically said the exact same thing that Dr. Bailey had said, which was, you do not want to make the pancreas angry. I was like, thanks, Meg. That helped tremendously. Okay. However, I have a really good ending to this story. While I know that it's very, very harsh to hear, Jeremy had 6 surgeries in 5 days. He was fighting for his life. However, there was one day, Jeremy went in for his 4th surgery. Dr. Force was his surgeon, and Dr. Force came to me and he said, okay, we're going in and this is the surgery that's going to decide where we go from here. If the pancreas is healing itself, which is the goal of medicine, you want the body to do as much as it can possibly do on its own without intervention. Dr. Force said, if the body is healing itself, that is good. Then we don't do anything. We let the body continue to do what it's going to do. If the pancreas is not healing itself after they had straightened it out because it was fractured, it was wrapped around his spine. If the pancreas is not healing itself, that means I have to do much more intervention than I would like to do. And that's when it gets a lot more dangerous. He said, short surgery, couple hours is a good sign. Longer than that is a bad sign. So just prepare yourself. Nobody would ever tell me if Jeremy was going to survive. And that was the question I asked every single time I met any doctor. I said, is my husband going to live? Nobody would ever say anything other than, we will do the best we can. And all I wanted was somebody to say yes. I asked every single time, even though I knew what the question and answer was going to be. So Dr. Force disappeared behind those doors, and I absolutely lost it. I was in a waiting room in Creighton University Medical Center in Omaha, surrounded by 30 family members and friends. Everybody was there because it was still very touch and go. Nobody would even leave the hospital. I hit my knees and I just absolutely started screaming. I am trilingual, English, Spanish, and sarcasm. And I found every single cuss word I could think of in all 3 languages, and I directed them right at God. That was exactly who I was angry at. And I screamed, why on earth would you give this to him? He is the kindest, sweetest man in the entire world, and this is what you do to him? I screamed and I cried for 10 minutes, I think. It probably seemed like forever to everybody who was watching me, because in that moment, it was just me and my faith. And I had about none. I lifted my head up when I finally got done with my hissy fit, and I looked at my sister-in-law. She is 10 and a half years younger than my husband. So she was right around 17, 18 years old at the time. I looked at her and I saw that she was bawling. She had tears streaming down her cheeks. And to this day, I don't know if people think that I'm crazy. I really don't care, because I know what I saw. But it was in that moment that I did not see Jackie. I saw Jesus. And I saw him crying. He was not doing this to us. He was just as upset about this as everybody else was. But he was allowing this to happen in order to grow us, because he knew that one day I would get to sit in front of a group of people like you and tell you that other people have been through HE double hockey sticks, and that mental illness is not the all-all to ends-all. That there is hope, but that it is work. And that work is 100% worth it. I literally gave my life at that time to Jesus. That is when I found my faith. After that happened, remember what I said, what the surgeon said? What did he say about a long surgery? Long surgery, bad. Short surgery, good. The doctor came back into that room after 45 minutes. And he looked at me and he said, the body is healing itself. I don't know why. It looks completely different than it did yesterday, but something is working. So it was at that moment that I knew what we needed to do. I knew what my goal was. I knew that I was going to turn into a firecracker, and I was going to start fighting really hard for my husband, no matter what that meant. I turned into the good, pardon this, but it's true. I turned into the good bitch of the West. That's what I call myself, because I had to become a fighter for my husband. Jeremy obviously did survive. You can look at him today and you would have absolutely no idea. Unfortunately, it took longer for my husband to realize that we may have a purpose than it took for me. That was the day that everything changed for me. But Jeremy woke up from his medically induced coma and all of his injuries, and he thought, darn it, it didn't work. So as much as I would like to say he woke up and everything was magically better, that wasn't the truth. It was better for me, but I had to turn into a fighter because my husband was not able to fight. So this is, you're probably wondering why on earth there's a picture of Menards. Do you see Menards? Okay. So we're a good old-fashioned central Nebraska couple. And we both grew up in small towns. I grew up on a feedlot. And so when we go on dates, we do what every good old central Nebraska couple does. We go to Menards. That's what we do. Doesn't that sound romantic? Why would I want anything more? Right? So one day, well after the accident, we're walking around Menards. I had found a local support group there in Kearney, And we were starting to attend this support group for people with mental illness and their support persons. It was the first time that Jeremy and I both were getting used to talking about the reality of what we were living, with Jeremy even accepting that he had depression, that he was on medication, that he was trying to get himself better. So we were going into this group. So one night, we were early for our group, for our mental health group talk, and we decided to do, again, what every good old Central Nebraska couple does, and we went to Menards. So we're walking around there, and this is probably my favorite story because it made my husband so uncomfortable. I love making my husband uncomfortable. He's so fun. So we're walking around Menards and we see Rocky Steinbrink. Do you guys know where Steinbrink's landscaping is in Cozad? Or not in Cozad, in Kearney?
Anybody? No.
No? Okay, it's back behind Thirsty's, like this really, really nice landscaping business that's on back behind Thirsty's on the way over to like Kearney High. Okay, there's a really nice landscaping store back there. Clearly, he's not doing a great job of landscaping or of advertising. I will let him know. But so Rocky Steinbrink is the owner of Steinbrink's Landscaping and Greenhouse, and we ran into him and his wife, Dione, there at Menards. When we ran into them, Rocky did the whole thing that he always does, you know, how the heck are ya? He doesn't say heck. I'm trying really hard not to be my typical potty mouth self right now, okay? Trying really hard. It's not easy for me. So he, you know, how the heck are ya? He extends his hand and we're chatting. And he says to Jeremy and I, what brings you guys to Kearney? I look at my husband and I can see that he is about to lie. He is about to do the whole, oh, we're just having a date night, because he doesn't want to tell anybody the truth. I literally stepped in front of my husband. I looked at Rocky and I said, oh, Jeremy's struggling with depression. We have found a support group to be able to talk through these things. To this day, Jeremy will tell you all of the color drained from his face. He turned completely white. Like, I cannot believe that she just said that. I can't believe she just did this. But it was that moment that changed everything for Jeremy, because Rocky's wife looked at him and said, oh, I struggle with depression too. Tell me more about this support group. And everything changed. Jeremy realized he was not by himself. There are other people who deal with this as well. It is nothing to be ashamed of. They started talking. They stood there and talked about depression and about that support group for 20 minutes. We ended up being late to the meeting. Dione ended up coming to that meeting with us a couple more times after that, and everything changed. Jeremy started learning how to be open and honest about the struggles that he was dealing with. So it was then in 2014, the end of 2014, we were still really struggling with trying to find the right combination of medications for Jeremy. Some people can find the right medication immediately. Some people don't need medication. Jeremy's suicidal thoughts were so strong that he did require medication, and he does to this day. He will require it for the rest of his life, we believe. I can't say, you know, one way or another what will happen in the future, but it is very possible that he will be on medication for the rest of his life for it. So we were really struggling with trying to find the right balance of medications. Essentially, what we know to be true now about medications is that they regulate the extremes. They do not just stop all of the symptoms of depression or mental illness. They regulate the extremes. So it's very important to not only use medications, but to also use counseling, exercise, diet, your support network, and so on and so forth, whatever works for the individual. So in 2014, I actually left my job as a teacher in Gothenburg because Jeremy was really struggling again. We were open about it. We were being much more open about it. We had even started, I think we started our Facebook group in 2015, but more and more people knew our reality. But it was in 2014 that I left my teaching job and I stayed at home. I brought my son to preschool. I had more time with him. I was with Jeremy 24/7 all the time because he couldn't be left alone. If I woke up in the middle of the night and he was gone, it was absolutely terrifying because it was very possible that he had attempted, and he did multiple times. We ended up deciding either A, Jeremy was really, really bad at trying to kill himself, or B, there was a reason that he kept being kept alive. And again, I know that that's humor and mental illness isn't funny, but that's our reality. And so we've decided, yep, A, he definitely sucks at killing himself, but there very well may be another reason that he is being kept alive. So after I had been home working for, if any of you have any family members who call the Home Shopping Network and buy fabulous things on Home Shopping Network? No? Do you know what the Home Shopping Network is?
Anybody? A couple are nodding yes.
Okay, we really need to educate you. Oh my gosh, you don't know Grey's Anatomy, you don't know the Home Shopping Network, seriously. It's either I'm too old or you're too young. I'm gonna go with B, you're too young. I'm not too old. Don't fight me on that. Okay, so I worked for the Home Shopping Network. I was the person who, well, I was one of the people who people would call at like 3 o'clock in the morning and want to buy a fabulous bracelet. And then it was my job to try and talk them into, oh, you also need mascara and winter boots, and because that goes with bracelets. But that was literally what I had to do, was to upsell. I was terrible at it, but it was a job. And so I was able to work from home and be there with my husband. I didn't sleep in 6 years. I was working overnight, awake all of the time so that I could make sure that my husband was okay. Fortunately, I sleep very well now, thank God. But then it was in 2015, in March, when my husband got word that there was this place called Amen Clinic, and they actually did brain scans for mental illness. Didn't know anything about it, had literally never heard of it. We thought, okay, maybe this is something to look into. Jeremy started watching some videos on what Amen Clinic was, and without being somebody who shares his emotions very much, he does now, he's really good at it now, but Jeremy grew up with an emotionally abusive father who has since died by suicide in 2019. His father absolutely always told him, you're a man, you hide your emotions, you don't cry, you don't tell anybody, you just suck it up. That was how he grew up. And that day I walked downstairs and my husband was watching this video of these brain scans through Amen Clinic, and he absolutely was bawling. He had tears just streaming down his face. And he said, I have to go here. I had never seen my husband so passionate about something. So I was like, okay, all right, let's go. I mean, thinking that, everybody's going to want to do this, so they're probably not going to be able to get us in. They got us in 3 weeks later. We had an appointment. However, the closest one was in California. We live in Nebraska. So we loaded up our minivan with our 2 children and the promise of Disneyland, because we are not monsters. And we drove across the country to go to this crazy idea that you could actually see mental illness. What is this? Drove across the country to California. Thankfully, my cousin lived only 30 minutes away from there, so we didn't have to pay for a motel, which was awesome because we were gone for like 11 days. Stayed with my cousins, and Jeremy got a brain scan. So what you are looking at is what Amen Clinic does, and we are big proponents of Amen Clinic and of SPECT imaging. Mayo Clinic uses SPECT imaging as well. So it is available. It's just that insurance runs the world, and insurance doesn't like to pay for it because it's so much better to just throw medications at people with mental illness like darts in the dark. You can tell I'm a little sour about that. But This picture right here, okay, this is the first one I want you to pay attention to. This is a person's brain that is healthy. This is what the blood flow should look like, okay? The color doesn't matter. It just shows the blood flow over the brain. Blood should flow relatively smoothly, okay? These two are Jeremy's brain. You can see right here that there are some areas of the brain right there, right there, right there, where there is literally no blood flowing. Those are traumatic brain injuries. The doctor was able to look back at those and date a couple of them back to the accident. Obviously, he had major blows to the head during that. But he was also able to date one of the most important ones, this one right here. He dated that back to 2005. And Jeremy thought, what on earth? I didn't hit my head in 2005. The doctor said, did you have any major changes in activity? Have you ever heard that exercise increases the flow of blood to the brain? You ever heard that?
Yes.
Okay, I actually heard you that time. Thank you for speaking up. Exercise does increase the flow of blood to the brain. Do you remember what I told you my husband did when we were in college? He was a cross-country runner. When Jeremy graduated from college, when he finished his last cross-country race, where he received 4th place nationally, he stopped running. He completely stopped running cold turkey. He opened up a Dr. Pepper and he never looked back. The major decrease in the level of oxygen that his brain was getting literally resulted in a traumatic brain injury for my husband. He had always had depression, but the level of exercise that he was getting was providing so much oxygen to his brain that he was literally covering up the reality of his brain. Suicidal thoughts, major depressive disorder. Does that make you want to go out and start exercising? It should. I should say that it does that to me, but I'm quite the fluffy person, and I don't know. I think I like being fluffy. It's mostly food. I like food. It is what it is. The reality is that exercise makes a difference for mental health, big time, and we have the scans to prove it. So that is the biggest part. The other thing is this scalloping, they call it scalloping. That is how my husband was diagnosed with sleep apnea. He did not sleep well. They put him on a CPAP. Jeremy hasn't had suicidal thoughts since figuring out the types of medications and since starting his CPAP in almost 5 years. He used to not be able to go 5 minutes without having a suicidal thought that he would have to deal with. That's a huge win. These are the other scans of my husband's brain. So this is a healthy brain. This is my husband's brain, these two. Okay, there are a couple of really important areas. One, do you see the creepy clown face in my husband's brain? Isn't that fabulous? Yeah, this is why I hate clowns still to this day, because there's literally a clown who likes to live in my husband's brain and make him do naughty things. So that, there we go. Did you get it? Sorry, my screen was doing funny things. Can you see okay? Is it still there?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So this one right here, you see this area? I call it the clown nose. That area is literally where depression lives. Research tells us it is right there. It is in the middle of your brain, called the deep limbic system. The deep limbic system, when it is active, it's supposed to not even be active. It's supposed to be black. Black and blue on these scans means 0 to 25% activity. Red means 75% activity. White means 100% active. That area of my husband's brain is supposed to be completely dark. If you do not experience depression, if you do not experience suicidal thoughts in your brain, that is dark. But in my husband's brain, it's 100% white. So we were able to look at those scans and find medications based upon his scans to be able to figure out what would actually help him, what medications would target the correct areas of the brain. Up until then, he had been targeting all sorts of different areas, not knowing which part of the brain it was. But these scans are out there. This type of diagnosing exists. If you break your leg, what do? What do?
Anybody? Take an x-ray, she said.
Oh my gosh, what a concept. So if something isn't working well in our bodies, you can actually take a picture of it and actually look at the organ. I feel like that's a fabulous idea. Why aren't we doing that for people who are struggling with mental illness? Do you have a good answer for me? Does it make you mad? I couldn't hear you. Does it make you mad?
Speak up.
It sure as heck makes me mad. Wouldn't it be nice? Do any of you have somebody in your family or yourself who struggles with depression or mental illness?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be nice and a little bit validating to that person you love if they could actually see it on the screen in front of them? Think it would reduce some of the stigma that's attached to mental illness since we can actually see that it's real?
Yes.
Thank you. I like you. Sorry, I get a little fired up about this part. So this is what my husband fight to do. We try very hard to change policy so that this becomes available to everybody. Our insurance did not cover that trip. Best money I've ever spent, but it should. All right, moving on. I'm going to show you a little bit more. So last year, maybe it was 2 years ago. Oh gosh, I don't know what year it was. Our son started showing some very disturbing signs. This is Hudson. This was when we took him to Amen clinics to be able to help him because he started showing some concerning signs. Rather than waiting and just trying all these medications, we literally packed up and drove him to Amen clinic to get the scan. We were no longer messing around. This was our child. So fortunately, by the time that it was time for our son to go, there was one that had opened in Chicago. That was a lot closer than California. So we took Hudson to Chicago. And he got some brain scans. He was diagnosed with high functioning autism and with ADHD and OCD. I will tell you everything about our parenting has completely changed. His medications changed and our son is doing very, very well. This is Hudson the day that we were able to take him out of Richard Young Hospital when we had a medication mishap. But he, again, is doing very, very well. Essentially, the reason that I show you these things is because this is Hudson's brain. You remember the healthy brain? Look back at the healthy brain. Look how blue and black that is. Okay. Now I want you to imagine living in my son's brain. Does it look a little busy? Does it look overwhelming? That's autism and ADHD. It's very, very difficult for my son to be able to calm down because his brain wants to go all the time. However, with counseling, with medication, with parental and house changes, we didn't actually move. Well, we moved lately, but you know what I mean. Okay. We have been able to really help our son and he is doing amazing. When he was in elementary, before we figured this out, the reason that we took him to Amen Clinic was because, and this is great, you guys will love this. During recess, he had a little friend named Mackenzie who he had a crush on. He was in the 4th grade. During recess, Hudson decided that it was a good idea to slap her on the butt smell his hand, and tell her, I'm never going to wash this hand again. So proud. So proud. So in my head, as a parent, I'm imagining that my child's going to end up in prison for sexual harassment or rape or something someday. All of these alarms are going off. And that's not a bad thing, because as parents, we decided our son needed help. And that was why we went to Amen Clinics. And he did deliver Mackenzie flowers and a very sincere apology. And he got suspended. And I don't blame them. So that was fun. Anyway, this is our son, Asher. Asher has epilepsy. When Asher had his very first seizure, formerly known as a grand mal seizure, now known as a tonic-clonic seizure, when he had that very first seizure, they immediately did everything that they could to look at the brain. They put him into these giant machines. They hooked him up to all of these cords to do an EEG. Because of that, they were able to accurately diagnose him with epilepsy, and he's been on medication ever since and doing very well. Why didn't we do that when my husband had his very first suicide attempt? Why didn't we immediately start looking at the brain to see what we could do to help him? Why did we have to go through the HELL that we did before we got any help at all? That's what we're trying to fix. So we decided there was a purpose for the pain, and we began writing books. So we have written Never Alone, a husband and wife's journey with depression and faith. And after that, we wrote When the House Feels Sad, helping you understand depression. Never Alone is our story up until 2015. Everything that we went through. It shows his side as the person who struggled with mental illness, and my side as the person who watched him struggle with mental illness and tried to be his support person. When the House Feels Sad, helping you understand depression. I wrote that in about an hour. It's a book that is designed for families to open up a conversation with children if a loved one struggles with mental illness. It is brought down to a child's level of what depression actually is. And it's not scary. We didn't ever tell our kids when they were young that daddy tried to kill himself. What we said was, daddy's brain tells him to do things that could hurt him. So in order to protect daddy, we have to bring him to a hospital just like any other hospital. It's just a very special hospital for brains. Does that sound a little less scary? And is it still the truth? That's the most important thing for families, to help kids and everybody, adults, understand how to separate the person from the illness. This is not daddy's fault. This is daddy's brain. Daddy's brain isn't functioning correctly. And so because of that, his brain told him to do these things that he doesn't really want to do. And it can be very scary. That's how we change the words for our kids. So we wrote this book to be able to help other families open up that conversation with kids and have the right words. Well, I don't know if they're right, but have better words in order to make it not so scary, and also to help the next generations not be afraid of it and not be afraid to talk about it. This was my father-in-law. He died in June of 2019. So on the left, you'll see information about who my father-in-law was when he was really struggling with mental illness. He started meds in 1993 when his little sister was born, or when Jeremy's little sister was born, and he stopped shortly after. He said he didn't ever need any help. He was emotionally abusive to his 3 kids, my husband's 2 sisters, my husband, and to his wife. He constantly tried to buy happiness. He went into great debt because of it. Jeremy's mother, I'm Jeremy's wife, ended up finally leaving in April of 2019. He went in and out of wanting to accept help after she left because he started understanding that she wasn't going to come back unless he was going to get help. He spent 10 days in Richard Young Hospital. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and severe depression. He then visited his weight loss counselor in late May after he had started these new medications. She ranted and raved to him and complained that he was over-medicated and that was not healthy for what she was trying to help him do. He abruptly stopped the medications in late May, and he completed suicide on June 6, 2019. I wish that I could say that I'm not angry with that weight loss counselor, but I am. And I still struggle with that to this day. My husband does too. We all do. Because the reality is, if she had really been somebody who knew anything about mental illness, she would have known that you do not abruptly stop any medication. And we didn't understand that all of this had happened until after he was gone. So she had no degrees for and being any type of a counselor. She was just somebody who was doing weight loss counseling. And my father-in-law's gone. I wish I could say that I don't have a little bit of blame, but I do, and I'm really struggling through that. I'm trying really hard not to. I don't want to be that person. But it's a reality of my feelings, and so I'm just going to be honest and tell you that that's something that I struggle with and that I'm working really hard to get through. I think that it's important to help people understand that it is okay to send somebody on further to somebody who knows more about a situation than we do. What time does your class get over?
10:45.
Okay, all right. I'll finish up here. So, the real Randy, when he was not struggling with mental illness, he had an extremely strong work ethic. He was a very hardworking man. He would drop everything to help if anybody needed it. He was very proud of my teaching career. He would always ask me about my career and what I was doing, and he absolutely loved that. He spoiled his grandboys with bags of candy, with four-wheeler rides, and many other memories. In 2017, he opened up a conversation with Jeremy about the fact that he was struggling. They had a really good conversation. Jeremy set him up with appointments, but Randy never went. He never showed up. He did attend church with us in late April, shortly before he died, and we were able to witness him giving his life to Christ. He fought hard to improve himself, but ultimately mental illness won in this life. Fortunately, Jeremy and I and all of our loved ones 100% believe that even when mental illness wins in this life, that Jesus already won the war. And we're very thankful for that. So our big three. Very important to know that it is not only medications. It has a lot to do with whether or not you believe there is hope. Faith is our number one, if you can't tell. Number two is our support network. I learned the very, very, very difficult, hard way that I cannot be the reason my husband is okay. I tried for a really long time to be, and it nearly killed me. So what we figured out, and what is the secret to our marriage, married 16 years, together 20 years, the secret is that we do not need each other. I don't need my husband. I choose him. Every single day, I choose him. I don't need him. I'll be okay without him. And so will he now. Probably wouldn't have been before until we learned this reality that we cannot be the reason each other is okay. Can't put that on a human. While it did start with me being his support person, he learned how to branch out to close family and friends. He's now also helping others by sharing on social media. That's another part of our support network. And medical professionals, a psychiatrist, not a family practitioner. Family practitioners have their place. The brain is not one of them. It is important to see a professional. A counselor, somebody who can help you work through the feelings, the thoughts that you're having. It's very, very, very important to learn how to be open and honest about this. And pastors. Pastors are really big for Jeremy. In the off weeks when he doesn't meet with his counselor, he meets with his pastor. It works great. And then medication and vitamins. Some people need medication, some people don't, and that's okay. But we also put in that sunshine, oxygen, healthy diet, and exercise, those make all the difference for mental health as well. I always say that we're solar powered. So while depression would like you to hide in a dark room, it's very important to force yourself or to have a support person who can help you open up those blinds and get out into the sunshine. It makes a big difference. So these are some warning signs to look for if you have loved ones or in yourself who may be struggling with mental illness. Isolation is a really big one. Lethargy and low motivation, not wanting to wake up in the morning, not wanting to go out and be with people. Change in appetite, whether it be overeating or undereating. Little or excessive sleep patterns. Some people with depression stay up all night long. Some people only want to sleep during the day, during the night, constantly. That desire to stay in the dark, draped shut, constantly living in the dark. And also desire to play video games in excess, again, most likely in the dark. There's a time and a place for video games. I'm not saying that they're all terrible, but if that desire continues to be isolated and to want to play video games in the dark, that's a big warning sign. So what can you do as an advocate? Be their advocate. Do things with them or for them. If somebody tells me that they're struggling, all that I have to say is, you know, I can be here to listen, and I am thrilled to help you make an appointment with a counselor or to make an appointment with a doctor to start talking through these things to really get some more help. It's okay to not know exactly what to do and to tell them that you're happy to help them find other resources as well. Just be there. Sometimes it just means listening and listen. Bring them to someone who knows more, like I just said, a counselor, a doctor, even the emergency room. If somebody's telling you that they have suicidal thoughts, the ER will not turn them down, and they may do a transfer to an inpatient mental health facility to keep them safe. Make a counseling appointment for them and even physically take them there. It's not that difficult to take some time out of our day to really show somebody that you care, that they're still here. Realize again that you cannot be the reason that they're okay. If you take them or you make that counseling appointment and that individual still refuses to go or refuses to accept help, that's not on you. While it's not easy for that person, it is a choice that has to be made, whether you want to fight or not. And it's hard to make that choice sometimes, but it's worth it. So these are just the different things that we do. Anchoring Hope for Mental Health. I do have my doctorate, and that is in special education. So I work a lot with individuals with disabilities, and mental health is really in there a lot. So these are just the different things that we do. We have an online presence, blogging and vlogging our reality. That's at Anchoring Hope for Mental Health on Facebook and Instagram. I tried Twitter. I don't understand it. I think it's stupid. They don't give me near enough words. My apologies. We've published these books. We do these presentations and discussions with whoever will listen. And I teach about social emotional learning. Social emotional learning is a way that we can teach future generations to be open and honest with their emotions, and actually learn how to work with one another while they're still in school, even before they leave and go out into, you know, the college world. Because research tells us that the biggest time for mental illness issues is between the ages of 17 and 25. And that's exactly when Jeremy started showing difficult signs. And also we really fight hard to get better medical care for the for mental health. So here are some resources for you. It is very important to check out counseling and psychotherapy or talk therapy centers. Do you know that on UNK's campus you get free counseling sessions built into your tuition? Okay, I see somebody nodding their head. Okay, yes, you do. Take advantage of those. And after your free ones have expired, they're like $10. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's like $150 every time that we go to the counselor. Okay, use that. It's worth it. But our website is jeremyandbailey.com. That's where you can order books if you choose to. Facebook, Instagram. I need to take off Twitter because I don't do Twitter anymore. There is our blog. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline is important. These are some other websites that we believe in, and that's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, or the AFSP. the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. They have support groups all over the country. And then Amen Clinics is where we went and had the SPECT imaging done. So, and that's just my research slide. Oh my gosh, I talked for so long. Do you have questions?
Anybody? Apparently not.
Did I make you fall asleep?
I don't see anybody sleeping.
All right, well, that is our story. I hope that it helped you guys. I apologize that my husband wasn't here with me, but please know that, like I said, I'm an instructor at UNK. My email is not hard to find. It's Koch, BJ @unk.edu, and I'm thrilled to help you, be a resource for you in any way. So I enjoyed being here with you. Thank you for letting me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bailey.
Yeah, of course. You guys have a great day. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. You too.